and gentlemen, welcome back once again, and for the 50th time, to another episode of Vanilla Minecraft. Feels kinda crazy to say that, and certainly doesn't feel like we've had 50 episodes, or at the very least it doesn't feel like I've accomplished 50 episodes worth of stuff, but I guess today we're gonna find out just how much I've really gotten done, because today is, of course, the day that we are going to do a world tour. Now, a couple things before we begin. First up, a quick history lesson for those of you who weren't here from the beginning or simply don't remember. This series started off not on a brand new world, but in fact on my server, which had already been up for quite some time. A little bit unconventional, but I think it's actually worked out pretty well for us. Now, my main base here on the server is the Mushroom Island that you're seeing now. And yes, this is a Mushroom Island. The reason I bring this up now is that I always get the question, why did you go to a Mushroom Island if you were just going to convert it to a jungle? And there's two reasons for this. One, I wanted my base to be an island, and honestly, Minecraft just does not make good islands other than Mushroom Island biomes, for whatever reason. Number two, and far more importantly, is lighting. The fact that regular hostile mobs don't spawn on Mushroom Island biomes means that you can light your builds however you want to, instead of needing them to be super bright all the time to prevent mobs from spawning. So that's the main reason for it, and honestly, I highly recommend building on a Mushroom Island biome if you get the chance. It is really, really cool to be able to build without worrying about lighting. Now, the other thing that I want to say is that obviously we are rocking shaders today, and if you're a regular viewer of mine, you know that that is, well, not exactly typical. The main reason I don't do it too often is that, well, shaders plus recording equals bad frame rate, and honestly, even without shaders, some parts of my base are a little bit laggy. So the video may get a tiny bit choppy at some points today, but I figured it would be kind of cool to see these builds and all of the things we've done in, I guess, a different light, if I want to put it as sort of a pun. So we're going to be doing that. Hopefully the lag isn't unbearable. We'll see how it goes. Now, with that being said, let's go ahead and start the tour properly, and to do that, we're going to head over to my main storage room. So there's not a whole lot to say about my main storage room. It's pretty basic as it is. There's no fully automated system behind it or anything like that. I tend to actually prefer manual storage rooms for my main storage for some reason. But this is also a good excuse to talk about the general theme of the island. You see, when I have a big project like this island, something that has a lot of individual little pieces to it, I like to give it a little bit of a theme, or I guess kind of a backstory. And then it helps me make sure that everything fits together and feels kind of cohesive, and everything feels like one big build, rather than a bunch of small individual ones. It kind of makes all the pieces fit together. Now, in the case of the island, what I've decided to do is make all of the builds feel like they were built by some ancient civilization. Think something along the lines of the Aztecs, the Incas, maybe even the Mayans, something with that general vibe to it, but a little more technologically advanced, a bit more magical, and also hidden away. For some reason, this group of people wanted to hide their stuff away, so pretty much nothing is visible from the outside of the island, and that means that most of their builds are underground and kind of hidden away from the surface. So that is the general idea. Now, as we go through this, you'll notice some builds don't reflect that very well, and those are the particularly old builds. As I've gone along, I've kind of changed what I want the builds to be and what I want the style to be over time, and it's made quite a difference. So hopefully eventually we're going to go through some of the old builds and renovate them a bit. We'll talk about that a little bit as we go, but for right now we need to move on because there's a lot to cover, and I don't want this video to be an hour long. So, if I start talking a little bit too fast for you, I apologize. I'll do my best to keep this balanced out. So, moving on to the back, we have my furnace system. Kind of a bland little room. Again, this is a very old structure, so it doesn't reflect the theme super well, but I think it feels okay. And it's a pretty typical setup. You can probably guess how it works. You put what you want to smelt in the right chest over here, you put the fuel source in the left, and a minecart system will automatically distribute that between these two sets of furnaces. Pretty standard stuff. We do also have this little block right here. Basically, if this is green, it means that the items that the furnaces smelt will automatically get pulled out and put into this output chest. But if it's red, it means the items will stay in and you can pull them out for XP. I normally never swap that. I always leave it on auto output, but it's a nice thing to have. So, with that said, we can move on to our first cave. Now, like I said before, pretty much everything we have is built underground, and the way that I get around to those various builds is via cave systems like this one. So basically, we have a bunch of small, interwound caves, and those lead to large cavernous rooms that we have our builds in. Now, you'll also notice that there's no visible light sources. In fact, you may have also noticed that in the storage room and furnace system over here. And that's kind of a conscious decision. I wanted to make it so that there was no visible light sources unless they were tied into the build directly. So sometimes we have lava or fire present and that lights parts up, but for the most part, all of our lighting is hidden. Now, that's not exactly the most logical thing, to have these ambiently lit caves like this, but, well, it's also not logical that we have caves with lush green foliage even though there's no sunlight, so realism kind of takes a backseat to cool factor sometimes, I guess. Anyway, as we head down here, we have a three-way split. If we go straight through, we end up in my bulk storage room. Now, this room is probably the most theme-breaking one out of all of them on the entire island because of the floor. So the floor has glass in it, and this is the only place on the entire island that has glass. And it feels a little bit strange, but this is a very old build, and when I was in here, I felt like it would be cool to be able to look down and see this, like, lush, overgrown, cavernous room down below, which looks a little strange. That hole right there does have water in it. For some reason, these shaders don't seem to like rendering water very well underground. They seem to depend on sunlight to make the water look good. So, actually, I think there's a setting for that, come to think of it. Let's take a look at that. Yeah, I think if we toggle water texture, yeah, it'll at least tint it blue for us. There we go. So, yeah, this is probably the strangest room on the island thematically, and I should probably change that and get rid of the glass, but I haven't been able to bring myself to do it just yet. It's one of those things, like, it's been this way for so long that I didn't want to change it, but I probably should. Other than that, pretty typical stuff. Again, just a bunch of chests in here. You would think that the chests up above would be enough, but frankly, I tend to hoard a lot of items, you may notice. So, yeah, I need a lot of storage. You get the point. Moving on. If we head over this way, we're going to end up in our netherwort farm, which I forgot to replant. Dang it, man. Okay, let's grab a few netherwort, and I will show you how this system works. So, this farm is... It's an okay farm. It was something I built very spur of the moment. I needed a lot of netherwort. I think it was when I was finishing up my brewing room, actually, and I didn't have a good source for netherwort. So I had to throw together a design relatively quickly, and this is pretty much what I came up with. It doesn't really fit the theme super well, but it does have the whole underground cave motif going, so I guess it's okay. Anyway, let's pretend that all of this stuff is grown, and we have a full field of netherwort here ready to harvest. If we go ahead and step on this pressure plate back here, assuming the farm isn't broken, we have water come down. That'll sweep all of the netherwort to the edges, and then once that water retracts, assuming that it doesn't take forever, I know it was broken at one point, once that water retracts, a minecart system will pick up all of the netherwort along the edges. Some of it can actually get stuck on the middle row here, just along the edges in certain spots. There is actually a minecart that tries to get it, but I didn't really think that was too big of a deal because, honestly, you need to walk out there to replant anyway. So, oh, there goes the minecart, so you can see all the netherwort getting picked up, though apparently it missed one spot here as well. Great system, very reliable. So this is another one of those things that I do want to come down and add a little bit more theme to, a little bit, you know, kind of tie it into the build style a little bit more, make it feel like it actually served more of a purpose rather than just being a growing field for netherwort. But that's something we'll worry about another time. That is the netherwort farm. Now, if we go across the other way, we're going to go to a build that is also very old, but is still one of my favorites. Oh, right, I always forget that this other build's down here. We'll see that in a second. But down this way is my brewing room, and this to this day is one of my favorite things I've built just because of how stupid and over the top it is. So, my brewing system revolves around this handsome fellow back here. We call him Olmec. He is our potion brewing deity. And basically, he handles our potion brewing for us. So, if we were low on water bottles in the automated system that I have, this eye right here would turn red to indicate that to us, and we could fill them into the system just by walking over here, filling them up in this little pond and throwing them in. That'll automatically pick them up and put them into the system. And then we decide what kind of potion we want. So currently it looks like I have sugar selected, as you can tell because it's white. And I also had glowstone, so this is going to make speed 2 potions. So if we go ahead and activate Olmec, and come over here, we're going to see the potion ingredients drop down in the altar. There went the sugar, and there goes the glowstone, and I think we missed the netherwort, which should have gone in first, unless the system is broken, which it very well might be. And Olmec's eye has turned green to indicate that he is currently running. Let's go ahead and shut him off so we only have this one potion brewing. And if I go ahead and skip ahead to when the potion is done brewing, Olmec is going to vomit those out for us like the gracious potion deity that he is, though it looks like the updates to the water system in 1.13 have broken that system a little bit. And the kind of output from our potions automatically get output to this dropper, and of course there is also a chest behind it to hold the excess, though it looks like we may have lost a potion in there somewhere. The joys of old builds getting broken all the time. So I'll have to look into that at some point, but that is our potion brewing system, and I am still quite fond of that. So let's go up this way and go to the other build that's in this cave, and that is our enchanting room. Now this one is far more recent than a lot of the other ones we've done, and it's a pretty unique build, at least I like to think so. So if we head down just a little further, here we go. I always meant to come down here and improve the leaf situation a little bit, so I still have to do that. But this is our enchanting cavern. So if we look down, it's a very deep cave, and I don't know how well this is going to show on YouTube. It actually looks like the shaders might be kind of ruining the effect a little as well. But basically down below, we're using the layered stained glass trick to make it look like fog descending down to the bottom, which normally looks really cool. Right now it looks a little dark. But up here we have our enchanting setup itself, and this is a pretty unique way to do it, at least I think so. I don't think I've seen anyone else do this before. Basically what we're doing is we have pillars of bookshelves around our enchanting table, and we're covering those with item frames using custom maps to give them a custom texture. In this case, I've basically went out and built a huge 128 by 128 structure that emulates a stone texture with little runes on it. And this is the end result. I think it turned out pretty cool. We still get the little runic symbols kind of floating into the enchanting table. It all feels pretty magical. So I like that. It also has the added benefit where if we click through the corner of these top ones right here, we can access an anvil. I managed to hide that in there as well, so I think that's pretty cool. And that is our enchanting room. I really need to use this more often though. I tend to use the one that's in my storage room because it's way more convenient, but that's kind of a shame after building this whole thing. So, do I have ender pearls? No, I don't. Normally, we could ender pearl straight out. I did add a little shortcut in, so we don't need to take this really long cave every single time. But of course, I forgot to bring those with me. So let's head up here. Yeah, the shortcut's right here. Normally, you can ender pearl in and out, and then you're right here at the cave entrance, but I'm a bit of a derp. So, that is pretty much everything that's in this particular cave system, except for one thing. So, if we head down in a little hidden entrance right here, and we go down this secret cave system, this is going to take us to that cave down below our bulk storage room. This is the area we were looking down on before. And if we go to the back of this area, there's another cave right down here. A cave that we haven't been in for quite a long time, which is a shame because this is hands down one of my favorite projects on the entire island. And that is, of course, if we ever reach it, the Mushroom Cavern. This was the very first thing that we ever did together in this series. The first 3 episodes were spent on it. I forgot these guys are down here. Those were a gift from a member of my server, if you want to call it that. So, this is the Mushroom Cavern. Basically, it was my rendition of a mushroom biome, kind of a tribute to what the island once was before I got here, I guess. And I think it turned out really cool. It's a very kind of mystical feeling place. Of course, we have the big king mushroom in the back and some mushrooms. One of these mushrooms, by the way, there she is. There's Princess Peach. This is my favorite mushroom of all time. I got so much mushroom stew from this mushroom when I first moved here. Like, she basically kept me alive for weeks. So, this mushroom in particular is the princess and ruler of this particular mushroom kingdom. So, that is the Mushroom Cavern. I do want to come down to this place again and add some more stuff to it. I would like to modify the walls a little bit more, kind of renovate the floor a little bit, because I think it feels a little bland. And, you know, maybe tie another build or 2 into it so we have more of a reason to come down here. I think that would be really, really cool, and it's something I've been meaning to do. And for better or worse, we're actually going to be forced to, because once 1.14 hits, this entire area is going to get very, very dark. The only lighting that's still going to work is the stuff hidden in the caps of the mushrooms themselves. All of the lighting that I'm doing on the ground level is using hidden lighting tricks that are actually getting broken. So, for better or worse, we're going to end up down here pretty soon, I think. So that is the Mushroom Cavern. Really looking forward to returning down here and adding some stuff to it. But that is for another time. Let's see if we can get out through the top. Nope. There we go. So now we're back up on the surface of the islands, and if we head over here, we are pretty much back to where we started. Right through here is the storage room, of course. Let me just do an F3A. The shaders tend to lag me out a little bit more as I go along. So let's head out this way and take a look at the animal farms. Now this is one of the very few things that's out on the surface of the island because, well, I felt like cramming the animals in an underground cave would be a little bit cruel. And this is pretty much the best thing I could come up with to match the theme that we have. These kind of stone pits built into the hillside. I think that fits relatively well with the general theme. Ooh, I'm laggy over here. But yeah, they're all pretty much the same thing. Just a general stone pit built into the hillside. I think it looks okay. I think it fits in fairly well, and it's not super visible from the outside of the island, so I don't think it breaks the theme too much. And of course, all of the pits have this little button that allows you to hop out. And, well, that's that. And with that being done, I think we're pretty much good with this corner of the island, which is good because this is the laggiest part of my base, and we need to get out of here. So if we start heading over here, let's actually turn that water thing off, because, oops, I think that the water looks better without it, at least when we're out in the open. There we go. Much better. So as we start going out here, we're going to see a lot of the landscaping work we've done. So like, for example, relatively recently, we went through some of the inland bodies of water and kind of made them feel like pond floors, like kind of mucky, muddy pond floors with some kelp and some seagrass and whatnot. We're going to definitely be adding some more builds to this area and hopefully making this feel a little bit more interesting, but I think for the time being it feels kind of good as like a natural underwater area. And obviously a big thing on the islands, we have a lot of cliffs going on. We're actually going to be revisiting those pretty soon as well, because I feel like my cliff designs that I've been going with are a little bit too basic. I was kind of trying to make them feel almost realistic in a way, and it kind of works, but I would like to add a little more detail to them. So that's another thing we're going to be doing, but I do think it feels kind of cool even as it is. So with that being said, let's actually head to another cliffy area of the base, the central valley right over this way. We're going to go ahead and cut through my portal room in order to do that. We'll be revisiting this shortly, don't you worry. But as we come out here, we have the main central valley of the island. Are there 4 parrots up there now? Oh, that poor bunny. So if we look up there, you might be able... Oh no, he doesn't render. Let's get a little bit closer. Oh, so laggy. I can't do it. Well, if you look up there, you might see the little head of a bunny poking out. That is Clifford, the cliff bunny. And he kind of landed there, and I've wanted to keep him there. But after I brought parrots to the island, a bunch of them kind of found their way to him and are constantly harassing him. So at some point, we need to stage a rescue operation to get those parrots away from that guy and hopefully build him a slightly better living situation. Though that's going to be a challenge, because we obviously don't want him to jump to his death when I get near him. So, not entirely sure how that's going to work. Anyway, I'm getting sidetracked. So, the central valley of our island here is pretty much the one place across the entire island where nothing from the outside could see it. It's kind of this enclosed area. So it's the one place on the island that I have a little bit of structure going on. And I actually want to add quite a bit more yet. But so far, we have this kind of decrepit old ruin of a shrine-like build here. Definitely needs a little bit of work yet, but it's kind of a cool idea, I think. And the general idea behind this, or at least the main reason that I built it right here, is that the middle part of it can actually open up. Basically what happens is every 8th night, to kind of mimic the lunar cycle of Minecraft itself, because there's 8 days, or, you know, kind of 8 days, I guess, to the lunar cycle, between each full moon, I should say. So every 8th day in the Minecraft night, this centerpiece actually opens up and beams moonlight down to the bottom. And we haven't done anything with it yet, but there is a huge room built down there, and that will eventually become our Temple of the Moon Goddess, which is something I'm really looking forward to building. But obviously we're not quite there just yet. I do really want to spend a lot more time focusing on deity stuff here on the island. I think it's going to be quite thematic and really make things feel a lot better. But that's what I have so far. Obviously we also have this thing, which is eventually going to lead down to that temple that I'm talking about, but it's not quite there just yet. So we're going to ignore it for the time being. And I would like to add extra structures to the to the sides of the chasm here as well. Like some kind of big, almost like house-like structure. Not literally a house, but maybe somewhere where some priest or some holy person could walk out and talk to people who were down at the shrine. I think that would be kind of cool. We'll talk more about that when we actually get to the project, though. For right now, we need to keep moving. So, as we head up here, with the glorious sun beaming in our eyes and making me blind, we're going to get to a part of the island that is a little bit more renovated. So, when I first came to the island, and when I first converted it over, I was a little bit lazy, and I basically just planted regular jungle trees, kind of like these, and I roughed the leaves up a little bit to make them look more bearable, but that's kind of all I did. They're still really bland looking. And now, every once in a while, as we go through the series, we have an episode where we work on the surface of the island a little bit, and I usually redo some of the trees and try and make them feel a little bit more natural and a little more interesting looking. They're still distinctly jungle trees. I didn't want to try and deviate too far from that because, well, frankly, I have over 60 trees on the island, and that would be a huge amount of work to make something bigger and more crazy looking. And also, I kind of like the look they have going on. So every once in a while we go through and we modify some of those. We have things like melon bushes and stones, and just recently we had started adding these. That is my own version of a beehive. That is, again, something built with custom maps, similar to how we did with the pillars in the enchanting room. So I think that's kind of a cool little detail, though unfortunately with 1.14 the composter block honestly works really well as a beehive. I could have just stuck one of those up there and it would have looked okay. So that's kind of a bummer. We'll still probably stick to those just because I have them, but yeah, that's a thing. And then, of course, you know, we just go through and add more and more detail. I am starving to death for some reason. You know, things like over here is a falling tree, for example. Little things to add more life and stuff to the surface of the island. And I would certainly like to start adding more to that and doing more interesting things. Man, that's glorious looking. So, with that being said, let's head on down here. And we'll see another one of our big kind of renovation projects. Another little body of water. A couple little waterfalls going into it, though those don't show super well with the shaders on. There should also be a couple fish in here, but I'm going to guess that they have found their way into that little crevice again. Oh, there's a parrot, which I'm guessing is following the fish, who are probably cramped back there. They refuse to stay out here for some reason, which is very annoying. But that's that. Let's go ahead and sleep so we can actually see what we're doing. And again, you know, going through, doing all the cliffs and stuff, that's something we're actually going to be revisiting and hopefully improving more and more as time goes on. Then we come over this way, and this side of the island I haven't quite redone. You'll see the trees are a little more bland. The only thing we've really done over here was made kind of a makeshift landslide. So if we hop up here and take a look at that. Why is the sun always in my eyes now? This is ridiculous. Yeah, we made like a little makeshift landslide. So I would like to add little one-off details like that a little more often as well. I don't know how convincing the effect of that really is, but I like the idea. And this leads us into the next cave system on the island. And this one is where most of our farms are. We'll see that area shortly. First up, we're actually going to see the pumpkin and melon farm. Now, this is probably the most illogical farm design ever. This was actually the very first thing that I ever designed for this island. In fact, when I designed this farm, I didn't even have the basis of the theme that I told you earlier for the island. At this point, the island was actually going to be something completely different, and all I knew that I wanted to do was make a farm system that was really over the top and weird. I wanted to make something that was completely impractical and worked in a really interesting way. And that's kind of a theme with all of my farm designs, but this one in particular is a little weird. So the way that this harvests is by breaking all of the crops like that, and then it dispenses water and washes all of them down. Now, when I originally built this, I think that crops broke off in a slightly different way, and they seemed to break off straight up and then fall straight down. And it actually worked really well, but for some reason now, especially with 1.13, I'm guessing, with the water pushing things around a lot of stuff gets stuck on the edges, which is kind of unfortunate. The farm design itself is also really weird and doesn't really fit in very well. So, at some point, we may still keep this one around, but we may build a new pumpkin and melon farm, like kind of wrap the cave around that way and do something new that fits in a little bit better. And then just keep this one here as kind of like a legacy thing, because I don't like tearing down builds. But yeah, that is my melon and pumpkin farm, at least the one here on my island. So if we head down here, we will end up in the room with my sugarcane farm and my crop farms. Again, kind of having the whole overgrown cave motif, though this one might have gone a little too far. I actually think that's because the vines have gradually taken over in ways that I never prevented. I really wish we had a better way of controlling vine growth, because string really isn't cutting it. But, yeah, here's these farms. Again, they work in slightly unique ways, and with a particular emphasis on moving water. That tends to be how I like to do things here on the island. So the crop farm, for example, if we go ahead and trigger it, you will see the water start flowing down, and then it'll start flowing down a series of channels and push all of the crops down to the edge. I'm actually wondering, yeah, we're actually getting some that fly over the edge now. Not too many, surprisingly enough, but I figured that would be a case with 1.13's water physics. After a few seconds, this stuff will start disappearing. You saw some of it disappeared right over there. There is actually a minecart system that takes care of all of this, but it also fills up very quickly, and it actually needs to make several trips in order to gather everything. So this does take a couple minutes to clear up, and much like the netherwort farm earlier, some stuff does get stuck. You'll notice that I'm not one for maximum efficiency in doing things properly. I tend to gravitate towards doing things in a unique, interesting looking way, more so than functional. But again, because we need to replant things manually, I guess it's not too big of a deal. So we're going to go ahead and let that auto-collect itself, and take a look at the sugarcane farm. This actually looks a little strange. Let's go ahead and turn the turn that shader option back on again. That still looks a little weird compared to what it normally does, but that's fine. So this was what I came up with for a sugarcane farm that works in a really unique way. And basically what it does is it double piston extends, breaks all of the sugarcane off, and then is broken itself. What is going on? Dang it, man. Oh, there it goes. Why did that take so long? Huh. Normally that retracts instantly, and then the water disperses and redistributes itself, and the farm's back to normal. Now, unfortunately, the collection system is broken because the new water physics put all the sugarcane up on this staircase instead of down on this ledge where it used to. Relatively easy fix, I just haven't gotten around to it yet. And of course, a couple pieces get stuck in weird areas because, again, I'm highly inefficient. But both of these farms automatically dispense their items down to this storage room down here. You'll see certain things, and my sorting system is broken. Why is that happening? Man, I'm just finding all kinds of things being broken today, aren't I? I'll have to look into that. But basically, this is where all of the crops get sorted to automatically after they get picked up by the system. Oh, I'm going to have such a to-do list when today is done. There's also this bridge thing in the middle. I thought that was kind of a cool way, not only to make it easier to get in and out of here, if we want to take a little bit of a shortcut, but it also gives you kind of a cool view of the two farms. So that's that. And then if we head down this way into another cave, this is going to lead us over to another farm room. And this one is kind of weird. This is one that's definitely getting redone. Basically, I did all of the other farms. I did the sugarcane and the pumpkins and melons and the crop farm. And I had these few other farms that I didn't really know what to do with. The cactus farm, the cocoa beans, and I threw vines in there for good measure. And I didn't really know what I wanted to do with them for farms, so I just kind of threw this one random room together and just left it at that. Not really how I like to do things these days. Again, this was back in the day of me being lazy, so they're functional, they do what they need to do, but yeah, we're going to do something a little more thematic and interesting with these at some point. So, that being said, let's head up this way, and we're going to head back to the surface and onto the beach. So, a little while back, we did this to the island. We added a little bit of a beach situation going on, which I think turned out okay. We added a few palm trees, because you can't have a beach without palm trees. A little overhang. We added some turtle eggs recently, and I don't know if the turtles are around. Let's turn that water setting back off. Gotta change it every time. I don't know if the turtles are still around. I saw them just recently, so they're still kind of around. Maybe they're out in the coral reef somewhere. We'll take a look at that next. But the beach itself, I think, is okay. It's felt kind of important to have a beach somewhere on the island. Wouldn't be a tropical island without one. We may still expand it a little more at some point to this other side of the island. I think that might be kind of cool, but I don't know. I need to weigh my options on what I really want to do over there. Now, as I said before, we do have a coral reef, but it's not exactly what you may be expecting. You see, I started this coral reef 1 week before Update Aquatic was announced. And because I didn't have access to coral blocks and all of that fancy stuff, I had to do it out of terracotta. Yeah, kind of a weird project, but honestly, it was really fun, and I think it turned out pretty cool. That being said, it might not be here much longer. I'm kind of thinking about moving this reef somewhere else. So, as much as I like it, and I really like the style that it has, it doesn't really make sense with our island, which isn't really a cartoony, over-the-top place. It's relatively realistic, whereas this reef is, like, straight out of a cartoon. It's, like, over-the-top crazy, all the corals are, like, 40 feet tall. Yeah, it's a little weird. I think it would make more sense for the island if we replaced it with something a little more realistic, using the actual coral blocks and all of that good stuff. So, that's something we may end up doing. I want to mess around with designs, though, and see if we can come up with something that looks a lot better than the natural coral reefs. I don't want it to feel vanilla down here, is the thing. So, I want to experiment with that a little bit. We'll see if we can come up with a way to make the coral reefs look really, really cool with the new coral blocks. And if we can, we're going to actually take these builds and move them somewhere else, somewhere away from the island. I actually have a perfect spot for them in... excuse me. A perfect spot for them in mind that we'll be seeing in a little bit. But, yeah, we'll have to see how that goes. Now, we do also, of course, have the little mini volcano over here, which is going to be kind of obscured by the sun, I guess. Can we turn the god rays off for a little bit? They're making it kind of hard to see certain things. I think sky and lighting, god rays. I think that's going to make this a little easier to see. Not much. Not much. Okay, that's fine. So, basically we have this little mini volcano over here. Not because I always intended to have one. Basically, there was a little island over there from the beginning that I didn't really know what to do with. It was just kind of an eyesore, and I wanted to get rid of it, but I didn't want to just, mow it down and pretend it was never there. I wanted to turn it into something. So, we turned it into this little volcano, which I realize the sun is kind of obscuring. Let's see if we can get a better view by kind of going around to the side. Sort of. So, yeah, there's not a whole lot to say about it. What you see is kind of what you get. The inside is hollow, though, and I do have a plan for what I want to build over here. I do want to tie this into our overall project, so we're definitely going to be doing that. And this also kind of leads over to a couple other builds. One right over here, though, I believe, if I'm on the right side of the island, yes. There's also an island over here that I usually forget exists. This is Bunny Island. So, basically, a while back, I brought rabbits over to my island, and I knew that eventually they would all kill themselves. I knew eventually that they would just hop off of the cliffs and we would have no more rabbits on our island. So, in order to keep a backup supply around that I could breed back up and bring new rabbits to the island if I wanted to, I needed somewhere to keep these guys. And I decided the best way to do that would be to create another island specifically for them. Let's go ahead and sleep. And thus was born Bunny Island. Now, I wanted to tie it into our main island somehow, so what I ended up doing was kind of making it seem like the ancient civilization had come over here at some point and seen all the rabbits, and then decided that was somehow, holy or magical or something. So they built all these rabbit statues and the big one up there, and yeah, Bunny Island. So that's what that is. Figured we'd cover that quickly. I feel like I'm probably going to miss something small like that somewhere along the way, but I think I'm going pretty good so far. Another little build that I probably tend to forget exists, though it was relatively recent, so it's not like it's out of fresh memory just yet, is the Pirate's Cave. This is another kind of weird one for our island, but basically we built this cave into the side of the island, mostly because I wanted the aesthetic of having, something like this from the outside. Some kind of dark, ominous-looking cave. But I wanted to put something inside of it, and I wasn't sure what that was going to be, and I decided to do something a little bit weird with it. Thus, we built the Pirate's Cave. So, what this essentially is the idea that at some point, pirates kind of drifted past the island, and they saw this cave, and they thought, hey, that is a perfect place. Oh my god, there's one of the turtles. I was not expecting this to be a place that they would end up in. How did you even get up here, dude? Okay, anyway, I'm distracted now. I thought it would be kind of cool if the pirates were going by, they looked in, and they saw, this perfect area to hide their booty, to stash away their treasure to someday return and get. So they built kind of a makeshift dock, which has since all fallen into the ground. I realize it's very dark in here. I'll have to remember to lighten this up in post a little bit. But they built this makeshift dock. It's mostly been kind of washed away now. A big part of the ceiling fell down and crumbled it in. But all of the treasure that they left behind is still here. So you've got chests full of diamonds and gold. You've got random weaponry, a gold gun, little piles of gold on the floor, and our suits of armor, and the pirate turtle, and even a little boat that they left behind, which is, kind of worn away and decrepit and crumbling into the ocean. All that kind of stuff. Kind of a silly build. It doesn't really fit in with anything else on the island, but I kind of like it for that reason. I think it's nice to have little deviations and things, and honestly, it doesn't really tie into the island at all. There's no, entrance or exit to it other than the opening, so it's kind of fine that it's its own little thing. So, with that being said, I think we've covered everything here on the island, right? I'm pretty sure we have. There's probably one or two little things that I'm missing out on, but we're also quite a long way into the video, and we have a lot of stuff to cover yet. So, let's hop on down to my portal rooms quick. Down this way. Now, I have two portal rooms. We have the one up here, which we'll talk about in a moment, and we also have the original one that I built, which is down here. And this one, as you can tell, is kind of going with the theme of the Nether corrupting the overworld. It's a theme really prevalent. I've seen a lot of people do that. But I decided to go kind of full-blown and make it really take over a particular cave and turn it purely into the Nether. And I think the effect is pretty good. If we come down there, I don't actually really want to go down there because I don't have ender pearls to get out. But, now I can't get out anyway. If we go down there, you can see a magma cube hopping around. That's my buddy Jerry. He is quite fond of hugs. He has hugged 2 people on the server to death already. But other than that, just a general Nether room. I'm sure you've seen similar things. And of course, we have the Nether portal itself, which I decided to do kind of an intricate design over. Now, the reason that I needed a second portal room is that trying to transport pretty much anything through this portal is literally the most frustrating thing in the world. I actually built the portal above when we came to get rabbits to the island, because trying to get rabbits through here without them hopping to their death down here, yeah, I wasn't about to try and do that. So what we ended up doing was building a second portal room, and one that's a little bit more thematic to the island, and that is this setup right here. So again, we have little statues. Here in the back we have Janus. This is our portal god, the god of gateways and whatnot. And if we give him a sacrifice of gold, let's go ahead and grab a gold nugget from in here, he actually manages our portal system for us. So he turns the portal down below off, and he wakes... Ow! Oh! Apparently that was not a proper gold nugget. He was not satisfied with that one at all. Yeah, he does get a little angry sometimes, Janus, but normally, when you wake him up, he deactivates the portal down below, and activates this one up here. Please don't. Thank you. He activates this one up here for us, and now we have a nice big portal if we want to transport things to and from the island. So let's go ahead and hop in there, and that's going to take us into the Nether. Now, my Nether is not something I have redone, surprisingly enough, after all this time. And the main reason that I have not redone my Nether tunnel yet is that we are about 4,600 blocks away from the Nether hub here. And that means that my Nether tunnel is stupid long. And on top of that, the Nether tunnel design that I have in mind, which I've had in mind for a very long time, is quite big, and it's going to be quite a task to do. In fact, at one point I was gathering materials for it, and if you look at these chests right here, these are not empty. All of the chests in this area right here, all of them that you see in front of you, are 100% full of light blue wool. It's 27 double chests, actually. And that was all of the light blue wool I was going to need. Now, the painful part about this is I'm not actually going to end up using any of this. I've decided, due to new blocks being added, that we're going to be using light blue concrete instead. So now I need to get 27 double chests of light blue concrete, and then several more double chests of a bunch of other materials. Yeah, you can see why I have been holding off on this project. Anyway, let's move on, and we're going to head up to what I affectionately call the cheaty platform. So, the cheaty platform, as soon as we get down here, is basically where I put all of the farms and various builds that don't really fit on my island. Things that I just don't want there or even physically couldn't put there. For example, things like our mob farm, which is what these 4 towers right here are. So, essentially, these are a pretty standard design. They're the water flushing systems that I'm sure you're pretty familiar with by now. I just decided to put a relatively fancy skin on them. And those all connect together and distribute items down to this storage system down here. And, yeah, pretty basic stuff. I'm sure you've seen mob farms 1,000 times. And, again, I'm a little bit of a hoarder. Anyway, that's what our mob farm system is like. Pretty basic stuff, though I think it looks pretty cool. Come on, get us up there. And again, this is kind of the point of this platform. We're up over the ocean, a little ways off from our islands, and it just was where we put things that don't fit on the island itself. Another thing we have up here is our AFK fish farm. Whew, starving again. And I decided, eventually, this wasn't the original intention with this place. Originally, the floating platform was going to be pure utility, but over time I decided why not turn this into a place full of crazy builds and make everything look really wonky and insane. So even the AFK fish farm that we built, we did something goofy with, and we turned it into, you know, kind of a giant fish. So, stuff like that. And then down this way, of course, we have my iron farms. Now, this is one of those things that I built a really, really long time ago, and this was before I decided to make everything kind of pretty. So, back in the day, when I originally built the iron farm, the only other thing up here was a mob farm, and at that point it was basically just a big cobble box in the sky. So that's why these are kind of ugly. I do actually hope to come over here at some point and build something pretty to disguise our iron golem farms. Assuming iron golem farms work in the future. They were actually kind of nerfed in the recent snapshot, though that was accidental, supposedly, but they are also changing villager AI soon, so yeah, a little nervous about that, but we'll see how it goes. It's pretty typical stuff, though. I'm sure you understand how these work. It's just villager pods around the, the spawning center for the golems. Really classic design. I went with this over the, Tango Tech designs because this style is pretty much guaranteed not to break unless they break iron farms as a whole. So, yeah, we'll see how that goes. Anyway, if we head on back to the central platform, you'll see that we have 2 other routes to go. One of those routes I haven't added anything to yet. The basic idea up here is basically that down each of the main paths there is one big farm at the end, and then a bunch of little ones along the path. And I know what I want to put on this one, we just haven't done it quite yet. Down this side, however, is our villager breeding and trading area. And you can see it in all of its glory right down there. So let's actually head down to that first, because that'll help me explain what all of this other stuff is. Now, our villager trading and breeding area is, well, it's obviously a giant villager. And basically, we have all of our guys stored away in here. I have yet to actually fill this thing up entirely, as you can tell. But the villagers that I do have are named, and we also have these little indicators in the item frames, which I would like to also name, so we can mouse over those. But basically, we can see, this guy is our mending villager who has 16 emeralds to trade for the emerald book. If we go ahead and push the villager's giant wooden nipple, that swaps him out, and now we have the villager that I have for unbreaking, which is unbreaking 3 for 42. Not actually that great. I actually have to really get in here and start working on getting the good villagers. It's something I haven't spent too much time on just yet. Where on earth did you come from? Why is there a stray nitwit? Ooh, that is scary, because he could be, breeding with these guys and everything. I don't like that. Apparently, I have a villager leak somewhere. I'm going to have to look into that. But, yeah, this is the villager system. It's also very noisy down here. Let's get out of there. And all of the other builds down in this area tie into that. These other builds are basically the trading resources for the villager farm itself. Let's go ahead and snooze again. So to one side, we have the giant pumpkin. It's kind of like a Alice in Wonderland fantasy-style pumpkin. And this is, of course, our melon and pumpkin farm. Now, it's a pretty standard design down below, you know, pistons and whatnot, breaking melons, a minecart picking them up. You get how it works, and of course, that is just to fuel our villager trading. The other side, we have 2 buildings. I kind of wanted them to be thematically the same, so I've been trying to make them feel like they were built from the 1920s or 30s, you know, something in that general era. So on the left-hand side, we have our crop building, which is kind of like an office building of some kinds, and I think that one turned out pretty cool. That's actually one of my, favorite builds as far as structures go, as far as like actual buildings go that I've done. I think the style of it's really cool. And each floor is basically a different crop. So we have 1 for wheat, 2 for potatoes, and 2 for carrots. And if we ever want to get those, we can walk in here. Looks kind of like a basic office building. I do still need to fix the ceiling. This was originally looking like this because I needed somewhere to hide the water. Like the water, in order to hold it up to hydrate our crop farms, like it messed with the rail down below. Thankfully, with waterlogged blocks, this is a very easy thing to fix. I just have to do it. But if we actually want to get access to our crops and whatnot, those are available in the chests back here. As you can see, I have a decent amount. And then over here, we have the potatoes. But if we don't want to come back here because we're lazy and we aren't, plebs who need to get items manually from chests, we can actually use the filing cabinet right up here. So these down here are actually storage minecarts. If we were to put a shulker box in one of these, whichever one we want the particular items from, it would take that shulker box, put it into the system, and return to us automatically one of the shulker boxes that are already in the system, which are pre-filled with one of these resources. And I think we can swap out 2 shulker boxes every like 2.5 to 3 minutes or so. So pretty good stuff. I don't have an empty shulker box on me to demonstrate it, so you'll have to take my word for it. So that's that. And then, of course, next to it, we have a project that we just did last episode, I believe, which is, of course, the sugarcane factory. Now, we're not going to look at that one too carefully because, well, 1, we just did it last episode, and 2, this build is actually still not finished. We're actually going to be changing this quite a lot. I'm pretty sure I am going to be expanding it more horizontally, like I said last episode, in order to make it feel like it's not quite so small. And a few other little changes to it to make it feel a little better, I think. Stuff like with the smoke and maybe a few exterior changes as well. But that's something that we'll be talking about in the future. For right now, we need to move on because, this is getting long. And we need to go to a brand new area, nowhere near my island, and that's going to be my flower forest biome. So, the original intention of my flower forest was just to be a place to farm flowers. However, the farms that I eventually ended up building for that made me change my mind and turn this into an entire project of its own. This, of course, has become the Fantasy Biome project. So, basically what happened is I built this giant flower right here. In fact, we need to use another firework in order to get a proper view of this thing, because it is quite large. This is actually our flower farm. Built into the top of it is an automatic flower system that dispenses bone meal and then washes them down with water. And within this farm, we get every type of flower that you can get from a flower forest at least, except for dandelions. And then we get dandelions inside of that flower down there. So this was kind of what I intended this project to be. And then, of course, we had to have a collection system. And that was this little flower bush over here, which you can walk into, and this is where all of the stuff gets automatically collected. There's also a little AFK room, just so, nothing can sneak up on you while you're waiting for your flowers. So, this was what this project was meant to be originally, but I really, really liked how it turned out, so we've actually spent a couple episodes here, and this has gradually turned into, well, the Fantasy Biome project. And eventually, I want this to turn into an entire biome full of giant plant life and maybe even a couple giant animals. So, there's a few things so far. Obviously, we have the 3 flowers that are part of our automatic flower system. We've built a couple other flowers over time, and of course the giant cattails or bulrushes, whatever you want to call them. Oh, and the lily pads as well. There was also a little experiment last time we were here of making a waterfall out of concrete powder. And honestly, I think that could look really, really cool, but I do think it would need to be on a larger scale. I think that the scale that this has is just a little bit too small to really pull off the effect well, but it is a really cool idea, I think. We'll have to experiment with that a little more at some point. So this is a project that I really do want to start expanding more, and there's a lot of things I would like to do with it, including a coral reef. This is actually the build that I think the coral reef style we saw earlier would fit in very well, and we do actually have a lot of ocean space connected to this biome. In fact, 2 sides of the area I've been working in so far are entirely deep ocean, so I think that would work really, really well, especially as we start expanding out and adding more and more diverse stuff to this place. So, that is the fantasy biome so far. Definitely still in its early stages, but probably one of my favorite projects just because of how kind of interesting and creative it is. Like, creative to work on, I should say. I'm not trying to sound like I'm some creative mastermind or something. I really like working on it, though. I like the creative process. So, that is the fantasy biome. I realize that was kind of a quick overview. Now we're going to head to somewhere far, far away, and that is the Megataiga Village. So the Megataiga Village, and yes, I still haven't chose a proper name for this thing just yet, though we'll probably be doing that next time we're over here together. But the Megataiga Village is another one of those projects that's in its very early stages, and I hope to turn it into something cool, though honestly, I'm a little bit nervous about this one. You see, this project has a theme to it, much like my island does. And in the case of this village, the theme is that it's a group of medieval-era people kind of banding together to survive the night. That's pretty much the entire thing. So, the idea is that there's all of these, zombies, skeletons, giant spiders, etc., and everyone is depending on one another to survive that. So you have some people who are dedicated to protecting everyone, you have someone who's a dedicated farmer that feeds the entire village, you have a seamstress who makes clothes for everyone, you have a blacksmith who makes all the tools and weaponry, that kind of thing. It's kind of a communist village, actually. So, that's the general idea, and I like the concept a lot. The only issue with it is that because this is kind of a survivalist group of people, and they don't really have any luxuries, it means that the buildings themselves are relatively basic. I mean, they look okay, they serve the purpose that they are supposed to, and honestly, I think when you consider that, they look fine, but that also means they're not really impressive as builds, right? You wouldn't look at this house and go, man, that's a great build, right? It's really simple. And while I think that looks fine, and I think that's cool for the theme that we have, I really want the build to eventually feel cooler than that. Now, I think that, hopefully, I should say I hope that, over time, as we add more of these builds in, and as we add more details, things like broken down carts, and outhouses, and wells, and stuff like this crane over here, which is hoisting materials up to this higher ledge, as we add more and more stuff like that, I want it to feel more and more lived in, and ideally give the build more character, so it won't necessarily be one of those builds that's impressive looking, but it'll feel really cool to walk through it. At least that's my goal. Whether or not we actually reach that is, well, we'll just have to wait and see, I guess. There are going to be a couple builds that might turn out kind of cool. For example, we do have an ocean over that way, and I want to build a dock on it, and hopefully that will be a kind of a cool build. It's going to be a little bit bigger than houses and stuff, obviously. So we'll see how that turns out. The farm area is another one I think will eventually turn out cool. And I also like to add a lot of detail to the individual builds. So like this house, for example, is the house of the seamstress. So we have things like cloth hanging outside, water boiling to do different things with dyes, and some different containers of materials. Obviously, this was before spruce trap doors, so I couldn't make proper containers. We will be fixing that. And the seamstress also has a little bit of a secret. Not that we ever go down here normally, but there's a secret trapdoor in her house that leads to a cave where she practices witchcrafty stuff. Doesn't really serve any practical purpose. I just thought it was kind of a cool thing for the lore of the village to have someone that's kind of a double agent of sorts, doing things like that. And if we actually come over here and read her little witchy book, and stand on that pressure plate, of course, we actually get a zombie that spawns in, like it's been summoned. And that's actually done via a zombie spawner that's behind the wall, and we darken this area enough for it to spawn. So, I thought that was kind of a neat little detail. It's just a fun little thing to throw in, even though it's not something we really see or ever notice. So, that's pretty much all this place is. We can take a look at one or two other builds, I suppose, because that's pretty much all there is. We have the horse stable over here, which feels a little unique, I guess. It's kind of a semicircle and got like a thatch roof going on and whatnot. I think that feels okay. I would like to put a couple horses in here. I think that'll sell the effect a little bit better. And we also have the blacksmith, which is not super detailed, but is okay. If we come over here... Oh, I left shulker boxes here. I do that so often. I really need to stop. But here's the blacksmith. He's got this like little thatch canopy area outside of his house. He does his thing out here. Little table with a hammer on it. Some armor he's working on. You get the idea. General details like that. Once we have an entire village full of them, I think it'll start feeling a little bit cooler. So, that is the Mega Taiga village, but we've spent too long here as is. I do realize I feel like I'm kind of rushing at this point, because I totally am. But there's one more spot, just one more, that I want to stop today, and that is, of course, Limelands. Huh, turns out we have a mob head shop here on the server that I didn't realize was a thing. That's kind of cool. I really need to get over to spawn more often, and more importantly, I actually need to start building stuff at spawn more often, which I've only been saying since before this series even began, and I have yet to do it because I am the worst. So, yeah. That needs to change. Anyway, we're going to head over to Limelands. As we start leaving spawn, you see this little balloon holding up a sign. Limeland now open. If we head over this way, we're going to see the main sign. Oh, come on, firework. There's the main sign. Surprisingly, that is still functioning. I figured the minecart would have broken by now, but that's still looking good. What is this now? Why is there so much stuff that I don't know what it is? I miss out on so much. What is this? Don't mind me. Welcome to the Abba Caving Hobbit Hole. Oh, right. I knew about this. Well, I knew it was going to be made. I just didn't know that it was actually constructed. Of course, this is a place where you start an Abba Caving run with someone. Okay, so I kind of knew about that one at least. Sort of. I just didn't know it was actually built. I miss out on so much. Anyway, here is Limelands, and this is kind of the mini-games, carnival-y area of the server. Or at least it should be. There's not a lot over here just yet. In fact, the only real game added so far was added by someone else. This is the hockey rink built by Leb, and I believe Maudie helped as well with the actual aesthetic side of it. Really cool. It's basically a fully functional hockey minigame. We really need to get over here and play this at some point. I think there was a game just recently with a couple people. I miss out. I miss out on everything because I'm never online at the right time. But hopefully we get to do that eventually. There's also a couple things that I've started here. One of which being the Witch Arena, which was the very first thing that we built here. I have the little Witch Arena banners. And basically, if we push this button... Oh, they still have potion effects on them. They must have fought recently without being loaded for too long. So, they got kind of transported away to start the match. And once we hear the ding... Any second. There we go. Now the witch boxing match starts. So basically these two are going to go at it perpetually now, and because of the way that witches fight, they're never actually going to kill each other. So it's kind of like an endless boxing match. I thought that was kind of a neat little mechanic or gimmick, and I figured it'd be kind of fun to make a goofy build out of it. So I kind of like that. Unfortunately, I do think this might get broken in 1.14. I accidentally triggered a witch fight in one of the snapshots when I was testing things, and the witches forgot about each other really quickly, which is really, really lame. So we'll have to test that out and see, but that's that. And then over here is the other thing I've built, or started to build rather, and I've left it for a very long time, and that is of course our zombie racing minigame. So basically, and I say this as it's getting nighttime and dark out, but basically there's a zombie down there, and the idea is that we want him to get released, and we want to try and navigate him to the end of this as soon as possible. Now, there's going to be two sides to this, two mirrored courses just like this one, or I should say this one and another mirrored version of it next to it, and the idea is that two players are racing against one another. So you would release the zombie. First you choose which path you want him to go down here at the start. And each path is slightly different. So like the middle path here is definitely the quickest. But one, you need to activate these blue blocks to help the zombie hop over this ledge. And if you go the middle route, the opposite player can also slow him down by releasing some water. And apparently there's not actually water in there for some reason. Huh, that's interesting. But yeah, so you could go the middle route and you have the risk of being slowed down, but if not, then it's the fastest. You could go the green route and it's a little bit slower, but you couldn't be slowed down. Or you could go the red route if you want your zombie to just do his thing. You don't need to worry about raising a platform for him, so you can focus more so on slowing down the opposing zombie. So that's kind of a good premise about how this game will work. You're basically racing to get your zombie to the end as fast as you can, while slowing down your opponents any way you can as well. I don't exactly know how that's going to work out. Obviously, there's, a lot left to do on this. It's very, very rough yet. I actually found this to be a really hard project to work on, because I found it hard to come up with different puzzles and things that worked fairly well. So we have that first bit. We also have this area, which that's water down there, and then, you raise up the bridge, but then the opposing player can stand over there on that pressure plate. It would actually be on their side, of course. But they could stand on that pressure plate, and it would actually lower half of the bridge, all those yellow blocks. I feel like I'm going to get zombied in the face here. So basically, you can stand here to speed up yours, but if they get a head start, they could actually stand there to slow yours down as well. So there's that kind of thing going on. Like this puzzle, you're basically swapping these blocks around, and this will change the pathfinding that the zombie can take. So if you switch it at just the right time, you can actually open up new paths for your zombie and give him the quickest route through. Or if the other person kind of messes you up at the wrong time, they could actually make your zombie get stuck in here for a little while. So that's kind of the idea behind this. There's a bunch of different little traps I've messed with. Like this, I think, would activate a dispenser, which I don't know that's actually down there, for a speed potion of some kind. Right here, the opposing player could try and knock the zombie off this ledge, or and you could try and defend, I guess is the idea there. I was messing with all kinds of stuff. This is definitely still very rough, but hopefully it turns out kind of fun. This is another one of those things that I really would like to finish in the future. Still need to figure out all of the details on it, and I'm not actually sure if this course is long enough just yet. Hopefully next time we're here, we at least figure out the full course, and then the time after we can duplicate it and do all the aesthetic stuff and all that. So that's the one mini game that I have going so far. I do have a lot of ideas for others. I just need to get this one out of the way. Anyway, with all of that being said, I think we're going to call it here, finally. I realize this video is probably nearly an hour long at this point, which is kind of gross. Apologies for that. I probably should have split it in 2 halves, but I thought I could get away with it. If you've made it all the way to the end, you are an absolute trooper. Give yourself a round of applause, because seriously, that is some dedication. And yeah, I think I'm going to end it here, because if I blab any longer, you're just going to fall asleep. So, thank you all for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed this little tour. I now have a to-do list that is a mile long of various builds to fix and to redo and to add to, and I still have many, many pages of new builds I want to do. Whew. We need to get to work. Anyway, that'll be saved for next time. As I said before, thank you all for watching. I hope you have an amazing day, and I'll see you next time.